NITV is the home of Indigenous storytelling.
We represent the oldest living continuous culture on the planet.
And 10 years ago, we joined the SBS network so we could share our stories and culture with more Aussies than ever before.
The knowledge systems created by the first inventors have sustained my ancestors for at least 65,000 years.
They've domesticated a whole landscape and waterway here.
Is Indigenous knowledge and Western science working together? What else is possible?
Living Black has the conversations that matter.
Do you remember what it was like and what happened when you were taken away from your mum?
You can't have reconciliation unless you're talking about issues of sovereignty, issues of justice.
Join me, Carla Grant, for thoughtful and entertaining discussions that will leave you inspired.
This is my country. Dahlia grew up here in Manjicore like me. We call each other cousin, Aboriginal way. Every time we have fun, we always get caught.
Hey, put them back in their cages!
There's no better way to understand the people than through their food. It's just a mouth explosion of flavours. So I'm going on a journey to uncover the secrets of Torres Strait Islander cooking. That's all that love going into it.
Aboriginal people make a huge difference in the police force.
The majority of my family members have been locked up. They've all had negative experiences with police.
We come into this job with the intention to start a healing process between police and our people.
I want them to know that I'm a Noongar man first. I am wearing the uniform, but when they do see the uniform, they can come to us for help.
It's never too late to learn, and so I got some mates in to help me. Bianca.
Thanks for having me on your country.
Aaron, Narelda, now get out your walking shoes.
Oh, wow.
Because Ray's going hiking in North Tasmania.
The greatest stories are where you'd least expect.
It's coming up on Going Places.
Let's get going.
We are the lovely people in lovely country.
It's a dream come true.
Footy's back.
These are people's stories, and these are people's journeys.
That connection you made can last forever.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name's Anusha Duray, and I'm here representing NITV, which is Australia's national Indigenous TV broadcaster. As you can see from that, in December we celebrated 10 years of being free to air. I'm talking as slowly as I can for my beautiful friend Olivier, because we're trying not to break him. And he's all by his lonesome at the moment. So our journey, what is the journey of NITV? How did we exist? Why did we exist? So in 1991, there was a Royal Commission into the Aboriginal deaths in custody. And one of the key recommendations from that is that Indigenous people be given control over the media to tell their own stories. It can't be, I think, underestimated what an impact that makes. Most of us here know how representation is so key, and what this report found was that the misrepresentation of Indigenous people was directly responsible for extreme violence and death, and something needed to happen. So it was, and one of my other favourite quotes by D.H. Hewley, which I speak about a lot when I give these kind of talks, because, as I said, I don't think it can be underestimated how powerful representation is. He says, the most dangerous place for a black person to live is in the white man's imagination. And that is why NITV exists. So what happened? That was in 1991. In 2005, there was a summit at Redfern, and it was held with key Indigenous media professionals and activists. Many of you who you would probably know their names, people like Rachel Perkins. You know, there were so many people involved in that. They started off in Redfern, they went to Parliament, and the attempt was to map out the potential of a national Indigenous broadcaster and what would that be and how would it look. Then on the 13th of July 2007, so it's a bit strange, it might be to say we're 10 years old and celebrating our 10-year anniversary, because on July 2007, we actually went streaming out across the bush, was the way we used to say it, on Foxtel. But as many of you will know, Foxtel is a pay TV channel, so people had to pay to get us. It was not free, and for most of us and for most of our communities, we don't have Foxtel. It's too expensive. It was unavailable in a lot of remote communities, but it was the start. It was a seed. You know, we were starting to develop what kind of programs and projects were important. In 2008, which was another key moment for NITV, is we joined the World Indigenous Television Network Broadcasters, WITBIN, which some of you may know about as well. In 2012 is when we merged with SBS, sorry. And that was when we came free to air. So that was our big 10-year celebration, which now, since that time, NITV has been available for free for all Australians. We had the launch in Uluru, or Alice Springs, our free to air launch, and it was a huge celebration and covered in the media. In 2014, First Contact, Season 1 launched with NITV and SBS. So that was our first co-launch with them, which was controversial, powerful, but as I said, not without controversy. So anyone that may have heard of that program before, it went on to make a few series. Even though, you know, it's not like we have a tiny population and we have very high populations in certain areas, it was found that 1 in 8 white Australians, or just non-Indigenous Australians, had never actually met or interacted with an Indigenous person, an Australian person. And from that, 1 in 8. So never had a conversation with them. And so that kind of ignorance, we know, breeds racism, breeds discrimination. So this show was about gathering a whole group of varied people who mainstream people who had never had contact, and putting them on this kind of reality series of meeting Indigenous people, staying in their homes, going to different communities. So yes, being in the middle of city in Redfern and staying with actually one of my family, like, you know, relations countrymen, Uncle Sean Phillips and his family, and then going out to the Northern Territory and hunting turtle. And it was hard for a lot of Australian Indigenous people to watch, including myself, because of course, to make good television, a lot of the participants were unapologetically racist. You know, there was a statement that was even in the promo and the trailer of this woman that just said, they're all alcoholics, they don't do anything, and all they do is get money from the government and buy big screen TVs. And she was just like, I don't care what people say. So it gained a huge audience. But it was interesting that was our first kind of going out together show was First Contact. In 2015 and 2016, we transformed our kind of news and current affairs. In 2018 was a big year for us. We launched Little J Big Cuz, which also won our first Logie Award for Best Children's Program. And it's a beautiful animated kids program, and as you know, animation is super expensive. But if you weren't in the last session, we spoke about how our communities are very young. So Lisa was talking about how youthful the population is in Aotearoa, but also surrounding islands. We are no different. Our biggest population is 15 and under, and continues to grow because we too are breeders. And so we have to make sure that we're creating content for those children, and we continue to, even though it's one of the most expensive things to do, even though it's really challenging, we actually are invested and will never change the purpose we put into our kids' content. Little J Big Cuz has now been translated into, I think we're up to like 16 languages, if not more now. We've had 2 seasons, as we said, won a Logie for one of them. Our 3rd season is about to come out. So that was really exciting for us. We also are very, we see ourselves our job is to reflect our community. So whilst other mainstream broadcasters are kind of trying to preempt, I guess, pop culture, reflect the new and what's coming up, we see ourselves very different in the media landscape because we see our responsibility to reflect a contemporary community, but also our past and our present, but like our history. It's a huge responsibility. So it really differs us from the other broadcasters and even the other channels within our kind of SBS family. And then we, in 2020, we simulcast Always Was, Always Will Be programming. And we had our first game show, which was called Fab Original. We also had The Beach, which was a documentary series by arguably one of our most successful directors, Warwick Thornton, which has now sold very well internationally and was very well received. And we also had one of our highest rating stunt months, which is not the kind of best word to use in it, during the Black Lives Matter, where we showed content from all around the world of that huge moment in time where everyone was talking about it. Oh, okay. So this slide is all about our 10-year celebration. And so what I've just done is kind of our past journey and what has got to our 10 years. And this is how we celebrated and kind of where we're going forward. So because our anniversary was in December, we've called this season or this stunt as the Summer of Us and celebrating who we are and what we do. We went back to Uluru to celebrate the 10 years and we had a large concert. There was lots of, the Whitbin also came to celebrate with us, the World Indigenous TV Networks broadcast. The state agencies came to celebrate. Netflix came with us, so it was a big party. But it was also about having meetings, great music, and obviously great content. So see, these are some of the highlights. These are all brand new shows, with the exception of Brand New Day, the film. But that was also a big celebration for us because it's the first time we've ever been able to buy or acquire that film because it cost lots of money, was very successful. Basically, we couldn't afford it. So, however many years later we could. So straight to the plate. You saw on that reel, we bring culture into all of our projects. So that essentially is kind of a cooking show, but it's kind of that factual programming where we make it entertaining, but we're going to make sure we're educating you too. So Aaron Farso is an incredible talent. He has his own production company, Lone Star, and it's about him and his family and cooking the most amazing food in the place in some of the most amazing islands in the world. And through that, we talk about culture, we talk about family, we talk about kinship, but we talk about climate change, the effects on food, and how in those places, that's devastating. No Ordinary Black is a really exciting project that I talk about here because this is our funded documentary kind of initiative that we've just started in the last couple of years. This is about bringing up some existing documentary filmmakers and giving them an opportunity to tell stories. These are not feature docs, these are short form docs, half an hour. We've just started, and the most exciting thing is they're already winning awards across, Finding Jeddah won one of the greatest short film awards last year. It hasn't even been released for us as yet. So already it's not only establishing, but it's filmmakers and developing their craft and art and giving them an opportunity. It's now bringing them awards, and, obviously that reflects well on us as well. Our law, so I spoke briefly about this yesterday. This is really exciting for us. So this is it started off as a No Ordinary Black, so a short form documentary, and it was about Indigenous people that work within the police force. As I spoke about, NITV was born out of the violence and murder by police of Aboriginal Australians. And this was a short story about Indigenous people working within the police force and what a challenge that is. What are the best things about it? What are the hardest things about it? And Netflix loved it. They ended up acquiring it just in its short form. And now we have gone on to do a co-production of a whole series of it, which you would have seen in the little screener as well. So that's a really exciting project for us, incredible for the filmmakers, and an opportunity with them of now moving, of just not being on NITV, national broadcaster, but now worldwide with investment from, one of the richest and most successful streamers in the world. I think we can go on. You also saw little highlights of Burrumbi Kids, which is one of the cutest shows I've ever seen in my life. And every time I see any little snippets, it just makes my heart warm. It was a real struggle to shoot that one because it was shot during COVID, and Tamarin Pictures was the production company and the producer was Danielle McLean, and I have no idea how she pulled it off, but she did, and it's just sweet as anything. Move along. Go through this. Yep. So, so we are available, there's lots of conversation we've had at FIFO for the last couple of years about the different landscape and how it's changing. We have a VOD platform, but essentially it's not ours. So it's SBS on demand, but all our content essentially is loaded up on that for people to watch. We're still getting there in terms of the curation and what we're doing, and it is unfortunate, I believe personally, that our content isn't branded on that site. So people going to that site to watch our content doesn't necessarily know it's NITV content. I actually, as acquisitions, don't get funded to buy VOD projects. So that's a challenge in itself as well. This is, so just back to that's that one. So there's a few, our news is always super important. This year, more so than ever, we currently there's a proposal to go to a referendum about what is being called a voice to Parliament. And it would take me all day to sit here and explain to you what that is, and we're all still very confused about it in our country, non-Indigenous and Indigenous. But essentially it's about a referendum where the public will be voting whether Indigenous Australians have a direct voice to Parliament, and what will that look like if it is. And the conversation is disturbing. There's a lot of people that don't want that to happen, and it's 2023, but there's also a lot of fear by Indigenous people of what will that look like? Will we get to select these people? Will they be handpicked by the government? And there's also a lot of lies getting fostered on both sides of what it will be and what it not. So more than ever, this year is, and this is why we are giving our news the term the truth tellers this year, because we see our role is absolutely not to tell our people and our community what they should vote, whether yes or no, but to make sure they have clear and accurate information on what this referendum is and what it's about. A referendum for us is huge. The last time we had a referendum was 1967, and that was for us to get the vote. And it was not, we only just got there. And we got there because of some incredible leaders, especially women, who made that happen. But we know that no matter what happens with this referendum, there's going to be a lot of hurt, and there's going to be a lot of pain, and there's going to be a lot of misinformation. And it's very important that NITV is there to make sure there's at least somewhere that our people can go that is safe and factual about what's occurring in the referendum. That's just a little bit of our online curation, and a lot of the things that we did during the 10-year, I think we can skip on past that. And we can skip on past that. Skip on past this and this, I think. And that's reels, which I don't know if it'll play well, and I don't think we kind of saw them anyway. So I guess my thing is I don't really want to talk at you. I don't know what you want to know. I'm pretty wonderful, but I'm not psychic. So I think if anyone would like to ask any questions, and I can do my best, as will poor Olivia.
So I believe earlier you said that you acquired a bunch of programming from the beautiful ladies that were here?
Yes.
What kind of programming would you be interested from Oceania? Yeah.
Oh, Oceania, absolutely. So our we're super interested. I've actually bought a lot of content from this area, and in fact, in terms of trade agreements with Australia, not only do I buy content from here, but I also have to directly respond to government and tell them how much money I'm spending and what I'm spending on. And that's not just for me, that's SBS and ABC, all have that as well. But it's very much, it's really important to us. The stories, some of them are so similar, but they're learnings, but we have a lot of interest. And like I said, we've got a lot of, we've married in as well, so we have mixed families. But in terms of what genre, everything. We're very, unlike other channels, we're very, we don't have specific slots or timings because we realise that people have to tell stories their own way in their own timings. So we're very flexible, but we get kids content, drama, factual, kind of everything.
And what about co-productions?
So I'm not in commissioning. However, and at the moment, we have only just started kind of talking about international co-pro, because when we started, it was very much a choice, because it was, we need to build our industry and our industry professionals first. And, you know, we still haven't had a budget increase since we first started. So we're still working on what we work with, and as we know, the face has changed. So it's hard to work in that environment without a budget increase. But it's now that we are very much, our head of commissioning, Marissa, is in conversations about possible co-productions internationally and what that would look like and how will we do it. You know, anyone who's tried to produce a co-pro will tell you it's hard. It's hard work, it's a lot of work, and if we're investing that kind of money, it's a big risk if it doesn't work. But it is definitely something that we have on our strategy going forward and would love to do.
Thank you.
Always. Oh, Lisa.
what kind of viewership do you guys get? You know, and does it quantify it demographically? You know, like.
So it does. So our ratings, you know, I as head of programming and acquisitions, I have to look at the ratings every day. However, our ratings are done by OzTam, and OzTam has only a few sets in people's individual houses across Australia. That is how we're given our audience feedback, and it's estimated by these couple of hundred boxes. Now, the issue with NITV and our thing is that we know out of, I think maybe, I just don't hold me to this because I'm not exactly sure, I think it's still only to this day around 400 boxes. The issue that we have as National Indigenous TV is that where the boxes are very focused. So the majority of boxes are on the east coast of Australia, so New South Wales, there's a couple in Queensland, and there's a little bit more in Victoria, a splattering in South Australia, and basically none within the Northern Territory and far north Queensland. Now, where do you think most of our people are? They're in the Northern Territory and they're in the far north, and that's where we have communities that are very much almost all Indigenous communities. What we do know as well is that there's only, out of that 400, there is 2 Indigenous families that have that box in their house. So our ratings are very small if we're getting them from OzTam, and we understand that. We are a small channel. We don't have huge marketing or publicity, but so we're still kind of, even after 10 years being free to air, a lot of it when I do conferences within Australia is still letting people know we exist. People are still finding us. However, the good news in that, as while the broadcast industry is kind of, you know, got smashed around by all these new streamers and all these new platforms, we are the one channel that is still growing audiences because people are still discovering us. So while every other channel is losing audiences, we're still picking up new audiences. So that's exciting. We also know we get more, I guess, I try and utilise a lot more data from our social media, because that, when people like things and see that, I can see much more from the OzTam because we can get a lot more data, male, female, ages, where they're from. So, I mean, it's a hindrance too, though, because OzTam is what ad agencies and companies look at. So it's hard for us to bring in more money because they don't see us having large audience, although we do have specific audiences. So we do, in a sense, you know, we get a lot from government agencies, health agencies, so community service announcements, public service announcements. So it's really great if they've got strategic, they're trying to get strategically to Indigenous communities and people. But it's still very challenging. The other thing for us is because we have such a small budget, we do have a high repeat ratio, and same things, advertising companies don't like that. They look at your repeat ratio. So I have, in the last 18 months, we have redesigned our whole schedule, and we have direct KPIs around trying to really bring the repeat ratio down in hoping to get more advertising.
And what about your contents on your platform?
Oh, the ratings on that. So on demand, the thing is, it's hard, like I said, and I'll probably get in trouble if any of my bosses are watching, but that's how I live, is we're not branded on there. So people don't know if they're coming to watch our shows, but they might be on there and enjoying it. So I can go in and say, I want the ratings on this, but we don't know whether an audience is picking to watch our content on purpose, which is kind of what we more want to look at. SBS On Demand is a really successful streamer, and there's a whole heap of content on it. So it would be really great for me to understand what audiences are liking of ours, but absolutely the audiences on demand and the streaming platforms are much higher than broadcast linear, but that's because we're able to capture the data of everyone watching.
Thank you, and I have one more question.
Sure.
Do you notice that the younger audience is more on mobile devices than on broadcast TV? Because that's a question that I have, because I see here today, all the youth all have a mobile phone or tablet, and they're online through their mobile device and don't really watch broadcast much.
Absolutely. So we know we have to be multi-platform, especially with the younger audience. So the issue for us is we only get, like I said, we still have the same amount of money we've had since we started, and we are funded to be a linear broadcast TV only. So everything else on top of it, we have to either make ourselves, or I have to negotiate essentially to get the rights for free, as if like, I'll buy this for that, but can you let me have 12 months? So, it's a weak bargaining position to be in, but we know our kids definitely do. Also, we know, because we have so many remote communities, etc., our engagement on social media platforms is high, much higher than, other areas or even Indigenous kids in terms of communications. However, like I said, our audience is still growing, and the one thing that we do know as well is, unlike the mainstream communities, our families still co-view. So that's really unusual now for other broadcasters. We know it's really common for 4 to 5 generations to sit there and co-view. So, for instance, our 7:30 Friday night family slot is one of our highest rating slots. As you know, there's not that many Indigenous family film slots, but we get a lot of, I love acquiring a whole heap of retro stuff from the 80s and 90s from things like Jim Henson and The Labyrinth, and they are one of our highest rating shows because people love to sit with their aunties and uncles and nan and be able to watch something and feel safe and comfortable and know. So it's interesting that we still, even though the whole population is moving forward and taking stuff, absorbing their content differently, we still are different, which is nice and interesting, I think. No worries. Thank you.